Good afternoon, members. Welcome to the Scrutiny Performance and Budget panel. In the absence of the chair, please could I ask for a nomination to chair this particular meeting, please?
Could I nominate Councillor Adams, please?
Thank you. I'll pass over to Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Colin. Welcome to the Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel meeting, which is being held in person at the COVID Safe Civic Centre and also webcast live with some non-member panel members and officers join us by Microsoft Teams. Please could members in the room remember the COVID safety measures that must be followed. Please ensure mobile phones are switched to silent. Use the microphones provided and switch them off when not speaking, please. Those joining us via Microsoft Teams are asked to remain muted and to use the raised hand feature when they wish to speak. Item 1, apologies of absence.
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor David Howarth, Councillor Colin Coulton and Councillor Karen Walton. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2, any declarations of interest? No, wonderful. Item 3, minutes of the meeting on Monday 22nd of March. Can I ask members to note these minutes, please? Moving on to item 4, matters arising from previous panel meetings. As all the recommendations from the previous meeting are now complete, members are asked to note the responses and agree that they are to be removed from the sheet. Yep, thank you very much. Moving on to item 5, quarter 4, performance monitoring report 2020-2021. I invite Councillor Paul Foster, Leader of the Council, who will present this item, supported by Gary Hall, the Chief Executive, and Vicky Willett, Shared Services Lead, Transformation and Partnerships.
Thanks, Chair. I'll speak briefly on the paper. Oh, there's some feedback there, isn't there? That's better, isn't it? I'll speak briefly on the paper, Chair. No, there's some serious feedback here.
Not on the table.
Is that better, Chair? Right, good, thank you. So I'll speak briefly because I'm aware that the committee's had the papers for a few days. Basically, this report presented today presents the performance of the corporate strategy at the end of quarter 4, which is basically January to March 2021. The report provides an update on the current position for the 14 projects, 24 key corporate strategy performance measures and the 13 key organisational performance measures. Moving through swiftly, Chair, to page 13, exemplary council. You'll note on the next page of the 4 key projects, all the projects are green that have started and there's no projects delayed. And the delivering year 1 of the joint digital strategy has not yet started, but is due to start. Moving on, thriving communities. You'll notice on page 16 that of the 3 projects, 2 are green, 1's amber. The amber project highlighted is the establishment of the South Ribble Together hubs. And although it is shown as amber, Chair, I think you'd all agree that Councillor Belinsky-Gelder has provided a number of significant updates on the community hubs and the development of them to both Cabinet and Council. And there's actually another report to Cabinet this week on the hubs, and we're satisfied that we have made significant progress, particularly in the last month or 2, in bringing the hubs to where we were hoping they would be and meeting the corporate objectives. I'm going to leave all the KPIs to the end, if I may, Chair. Moving on to a fair local economy that works for everyone. Of the 3 key projects, 2 are green and 1 has not yet started. So again, as far as we're concerned, the key projects are all where they need to be. And say we'll discuss the KPIs shortly. Good homes, green spaces, healthy places. Of the 4 projects, you'll notice on here there's only 1 green, 3 are amber. Just quickly going through them, Chair. They're delivering a project to support the green agenda. We have just literally received, as a Cabinet, the final draft report from the Climate Strategy Working Group, Climate Change Working Group. That's now going to be fast-tracked wherever possible to get that to Council and implemented ASAP. The reason that the delivering the leisure centre improvement project is slightly delayed, that's, Chair, because we're actually trying to tie that into the climate change strategy that we're looking to deliver, and we were hoping for the key projects in there to be more environmentally friendly. So we've deliberately slightly delayed that scheme, but it is going to be delivered nonetheless. And commencing the building of affordable homes within the borough. I'm slightly disappointed, and I pointed this out to officers, that this is amber, because you'll hopefully all be aware that we've just handed over the first batch of council houses in a generation in Bamber Bridge. And I think that, Chair, was more of a timing issue with the quarterly reporting, because, as I say, they've now been handed over. They were slightly delayed due to COVID, but we now have tenants living in those houses. And finally, Chair, if I may, if you scroll through to page 29, you'll see we have a lot of the KPIs that we discussed earlier. Without going through every one, you will notice that there are a number of KPIs that are trending in the wrong direction. And I would point out to the committee that these KPIs are really important to the council, but the council isn't in direct control over the deliverability of all these KPIs. But what they do give is a clear indication of where our and partners' priorities should be moving forward. In particular, I'd highlight to the committee as well, there is a developing trend of concern in respect to education and opportunities for young people. And that is directly linked to the pandemic. And I think that's something this council must keep a very, very close eye on. And I'm already aware that Gary and Vicky and others are speaking to partners about this, because it is a concern that the opportunities available to our younger people, educational and non-educational, have been impacted significantly over the last 12 to 18 months, and it's something we need to do and challenge moving forward. Other than that, unless Gary has anything further to add, I think we're open to questions, Chair.
Well, okay, thank you, Councillor Foster.
Chair, can I just say that Councillor Tomlinson has just indicated he's on his way, so he'll be here in about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Titherington. In carrying on from Councillor Howarth, who's usually chair of this committee, I will ask the first question, and I know that we have some more as well from Councillor Sharple. So I will start. If I can take you to page 15, establish Southwood Altogether hubs. The social media and newsletter engagement has taken place. What plans are there for bringing this project back on track next quarter? Also, could you please update us on the future engagement with residents through the hubs and ensuring this is representative of our community? It's page 15 and it's a paragraph 26 leads on to page 16.
I think it's fair to say, just quickly before Gary jumps in here, that I think the community newsletters and social media engagement for all the communities hubs has been a real success. It's a brand new thing that we're looking at, and I think some of the quality of the information that went out was really, really good. It's now for the council and for councillors and our communities to really embrace that and give it as wide a circulation as possible. And what we want clearly is for our communities, though, to be feeding into us on what their priorities are through the social media platforms. Gary?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So I don't think this project is off track due to the comms issues. I think this is more about the progress on the community hubs. So in relation to that, Obviously, one of the things that we haven't been able to do is to engage the public in relation to the hubs. So there are some plans to get that going. We'll have to wait and see what the announcement is tonight. That could shape and influence what we do in the hubs. We have plans to go out into the community to engage some of the community in their localities, and those plans are shaping up, but it will be dictated by the response to COVID. I think, unfortunately, we have to say that some of our plans on a wider scale in terms of engagement have been thwarted to some extent by COVID and may continue to do so for some time to come yet. So, I am reluctant to set a date on it as to when we'll get that back on that track, but clearly we want to do that as soon as possible when it's safe to do so.
Yeah, this question also refers to page 15, that paragraph 26 about the green plans for neighbourhood areas and a borough food bank network. Is the food bank element on track? What does success look like, and what is the council doing to reduce the need for food banks?
Success, Colin, is when we have no food banks, but unfortunately the demand in South Ribble is through the roof for food banks now. So what we are doing with our communities is trying to bring our food banks together. There's a number of very diverse community organisations delivering the food banks in every area of the borough. So we sit alongside the communities and do what we possibly can to encourage and engage and reach out to the local communities that they're serving. For example, we're aware of in Bamber Bridge, that they're looking for a new facility for the food bank, which we're looking to help them facilitate. We're tying them in as well with the food with the South Ribble Together hubs that you're aware of. So all the data that we gathered, all the engagement that we made with the local supermarkets and suppliers is all there, and it's all being fed out into our local communities and trying to deliver best we can for everybody that unfortunately needs the food banks. But I reiterate, the food bank usage in South Ribble is going up significantly in all areas of the borough, but success for us is to see a society where we don't actually need food banks.
Well, am I okay to come in? So the leader is right, but they are long-term solutions that we need to those particular issues. So we know, again, from some of the indicators, that it's likely that things like unemployment is going to increase due to COVID. We know that child poverty is still an issue in our borough, and the causes, I suppose, are inherent in many communities, and there is a job of work to do to make some progress on improving the life chances of a number of people in our communities. The intention was that that initial piece would go through the hubs, and I think if you look at the reports, some have started to tackle some of those issues, some haven't, and this is probably one of the learning pieces that we need to do now. What are we going to expect the hubs to kind of drive and take forward, and what as a council are we going to do? And of course we've got the refashioning of the local partnership, which again is key to addressing some of these issues. So there are things happening in the background that will help, but it will take a little bit of time. An example of that being that the hospital has just adopted a social value policy in its spend, which means that they'll be looking for local employment opportunities and all those things. So all those things are coming together, but they will take a little time to have an impact, I think.
Okay, thank you. Can I take you now to page 18, paragraph 32, Community Wealth Building Action Plan. What outcomes are there from this project to date, and what is meant by good progress?
I can take this one, Chair.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so I think one of the key things with this programme was to get the coordinator in place, so that post's now been appointed to, and the coordinator has got to grips with lots of the different aspects of work that the council is undertaking to support this agenda. So one of the key items I would suggest is obviously the credit union, which is due to launch this month, and obviously that's a key aspect of providing financial inclusion and making sure that all residents have access to decent finance. So that's one example. The coordinator has been working with the procurement team and with legal to look at our social value policy and also our social value portal, which will help us to measure through procurement how we're achieving social value. So that's really key, so that we know we're actually whether we're achieving the outcomes that we want to. And then within our communities team, we've started a lot of work around financial inclusion and starting to set up some of the foundations for that work to go forward. As well as that, we're obviously looking at some of the bigger pieces of work like the town deal and where there may be opportunities to take a social value approach to some of the work that we'll be doing there, and working with our planning colleagues to feed it into the work around the wider use of land and assets and things like that. So there's some immediate work that we're undertaking so that we can really start to see some quick wins, but then we're also looking ahead to the future to make sure that we're embedding the social value framework and the social value plan in everything that we do, and in our longer term projects. So that's some examples. Hopefully that's enough for now.
Thank you, Vicky, for that. Can I now take you to page 21 on paragraph 40? Councillor Foster's already alluded to this in his opening remarks. Can I ask about the leisure centres? After the 3 months delay, which is stated in the report, will the leisure centres be fully refurbished at this point? Vicky, is that you?
I can give an update, a brief update. Gary may wish to come in. So I think in terms of the 3 months delay, that relates specifically to the decarbonisation plans that need to be produced for the leisure centres. So the ongoing improvement work will continue. It's just that the timescale will be slightly expanded to allow for the decarbonisation work to be undertaken, and then everything will progress alongside that. So the work will be completed as planned, I understand, but it will just be slightly delayed by the 3 months period while we do the decarbonisation work. I don't know whether Gary wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I mean there is a slight delay while we look at the carbon footprint. That's been driven by funding opportunities that have come along, which is the reason for the delay. We need to make bids into some funding that's available to it. Lots of work has been done in the leisure centres, but people won't see it. It's all the gubbins in the leisure centres, all the things in the background that keep us safe and make sure we don't have accidents and are legally compliant. So all that work has gone on. There's been quite significant amounts of work done. This is about the kind of fabric and the look and the feel of the building. There's been a little bit of that gone on, but not an enormous amount. So as Vicky says, probably a delay of 3 months, and then obviously we'll need to go out to procurement for some of these things. So I think it'll be kind of 3 to 6 months before really we start to see that being implemented. Okay, thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, and it is in relation to the leisure centres again, when we will develop a long-term strategy regarding our leisure centre provision to ensure they are fit for future and deliver on our corporate priorities and the needs of residents. Councillor Foster.
Cheers, Chair. We already have a strategy, Will, and that's been shared with Council, and I know Councillor Titherington and the team are working tirelessly on looking now at what the long-term strategic plans are for a new facility, and we're hoping to bring something to Council in the coming months.
Okay, thank you very much. Another one of me, I'm held in this meeting. Page 21, paragraph 41, affordable housing. Following the success of Tom Hanson House, have the Cabinet got any more plans to create more affordable housing within South Ribble?
Thanks, Chair. Absolutely, we have. So we're looking across the borough at all opportunities. Clearly, the single biggest issue is land and sustainability, but there are a number of opportunities we feel for council houses within the borough, and I think you can rest assured that it is a top priority for the administration to find new sites and get new council homes in build as quickly as we possibly can. And you'll be aware that there's the ongoing discussions as well with Trafford Homes in lost a call, and hopefully we'll have an announcement to make on that quite shortly. And then from there, there's a potential again to deliver the next phase of council houses for our residents. But yeah, it's an absolute priority. We want to build hundreds and hundreds of these if we can, because there's a huge demand. If you remember at Tom Hanson House, there was 150 applications for each one of those properties. That's the demand in the borough. Gary?
Yeah, so you're right. It's a big priority for the council. The immediate plans we've got are obviously the extra care unit, Kenzie Arms development, and the Trafford site. But longer term, as the leader has said, we need to think about what does that look like. What are the pipeline schemes? To do anything at scale will require a different approach, and will require some partner input. So we have met with Homes England to discuss opportunities with them. There are access to quite a number of funding pots available, but they want to see big schemes, big strategic schemes. So those discussions are taking place, and obviously, once they're concluded, we'll be able to feed back to the council on the outcome of those deliberations with our key partners like Homes England.
And Chair, also, we've held discussions as late as last week with Councillor Matthew Brown, the leader at Preston City Council. They're keen to deliver more council homes, as is Alistair and Chorley. And if you think about it, the bigger we can scale up in central Lancashire together, as the Chief Executive says, the more opportunity we've got for match funding and delivering these facilities. So I think there's some quite exciting, large opportunities for the provision of council homes in the central Lancashire region, of which we're in the heart and the hub.
Thank you for that. You kind of answered the follow-up question that I had to that, so thank you. Colin?
Thanks, Chair. Page 27, I think. Yeah. 27,500. Oh, that's wrong. Sorry, that's the wrong one. Page 27. Average number of working days to approve the disabled facilities grants. The average number of days last year was 155, and Q4 this year 167 days. Both seem a long time if you're disabled and require an adaptation. Why does it take so long, and what can be done to expedite matters?
Cheers. Just before that, you've got to take that number with a little bit of pinch of salt, because it was one particular case that skewed that performance indicator. And I know Gary will come on to that in a second, but it is too long, but there are a number of reasons, Colin, why that is the case, the process. I don't know if Gary wants to, or Vicky wants to explain that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so it is too long, and very often some of these cases are quite complex. As the leader said, there's one particular instance that meant we were off target this particular quarter, but your question is about the length of time it takes in general, isn't it? So there are a number of reasons for it. The biggest single reason is waiting for the OT assessment, the occupational therapist assessment, because we can't move until we get that actual assessment in. So there is talk. Something we are considering is how can we boost that resource. That's led by our county colleagues, and it's been a challenge for quite some time. And obviously COVID's had an impact as well, Colin. Actually getting into people's houses to do the assessment has been a bit of a challenge. But I personally think the only way to do that is to boost the occupational therapist resource to speed things along, and that's something we're looking at. But it will require some partnership working with our county colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Again, question for myself. Page 45, staff health and wellbeing. It's good to see the support available for our employees. How successful has the support been during a pandemic, and what has the impact been on employees of the council?
Gary, I think. Or Vicky.
It's looking me up now. Thank you, Chair. So in terms of health and wellbeing throughout the pandemic, I think, we've been really focused on making sure that we continue to have conversations with staff that managers are regularly talking to the staff and have regular one-to-ones, and have those conversations about all aspects of work, not just kind of, the day-to-day work priorities, but also kind of people's wider sense of well-being. We know that staff are affected by many different factors, outside of work, people dealing with other challenges, family challenges that come with the restrictions imposed by the pandemic. So I think from our point of view, it's been about recognising, the demands placed on staff in the widest sense and supporting them in that way. We've put in place a range of support, as you'll be able to tell. And through measuring that, we've obviously most recently done the Pulse survey, which was a survey that went out to all staff to kind of do an organisational temperature check. And that was actually really positive in what it told us. Compared to other organisations, our staff are actually feeling very well. You don't get me wrong, there are aspects of, areas where people are struggling with their mental health and with their well-being. And that's something that we need to work with proactively and make sure that managers know what support is available to those staff and that they know how to access it. And we're also tailoring our offer to respond to areas where staff have highlighted particular needs. Going forward, we're going to be looking at doing more sort of wellbeing days, health and wellbeing days, picking up particular themes. And our management development programme, which is going to commence in the next couple of weeks, will start with mental wellness and health and wellbeing training for all managers, and everybody, and each manager will go through that process. So we've got lots of support in place, and we are strengthening what is already in place in response to staff feedback. And we will repeat the Pulse survey again in a couple of months to see whether the improvements have had an impact and a positive benefit for staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. I'll use my position as chair for this evening to say a huge thank you to the staff of the council. I think it's council staff very rarely get the plaudits that others in public service get, but they do provide an essential service. So I'll just take this opportunity to thank everyone from this committee. So thank you. I think that's it now in terms of questions from myself and Councillor Sharple.
Yes, Chair. Could I just come back with?
Of course you can.
Yeah, when we were talking about the affordable housing and Tom Hanson and expanding that, what will happen in terms of who manages that going down the line? Because at the moment we've got a third party running it. Are we likely to bring that in-house as well, the actual management side of it?
Yes. So that the plan is that we will manage this ourselves. The Tom Hanson house was slightly different because of its timing, and we did a deal 12 months, 18 months ago. So, but that, if you remember, Colin, that's only a short-term deal that we've done. The plan is that Tom Hanson house itself will come under in-house, for want of a better word, under council management. But what we're doing at the moment is we're scaling up. So when we have the extra care facility that the chief exec mentioned earlier, and we have the other housing on Station Road, we've got enough scale to start managing these facilities ourselves. But remember as well, there is this quirk where was a cap that under the Local Government Act, I think it is, Gary, isn't it, that there's some legislation somewhere that states we can only hold up to 200 properties ourselves actually within the local authority. So Gary and the team are looking at all sorts of options with Homes England and others there are a number of different routes we can go down to when we have more than 200, how to manage those properties. And as we're doing with the Leisure, there's a local authority trading company that we brought in to manage that on our behalf, but it's wholly owned by the authority. But the simple answer to your question is yes.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Foster. Are there any questions from members not on the panel? No, can't hear any. Okay, thank you. No public questions have been received. Can we just formulate any recommendations, please, Darren?
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes covered by the panel tonight may lead to recommendations, such as the panel thanks the leader, Chief Executive and Shared Services lead for attending and their detailed reports. The panel welcomes the Council's performance and progress made in Q4. The panel commends the face-to-face community engagement plans post-COVID. The panel looks forward to the long-term future strategy for the leisure centres being considered by the Council. The panel wishes the Council well in the partnership discussions to expedite disabled facilities grants and asks to be kept up to date with these discussions. And finally, the panel thanks all employees for their essential services that they provide to the community. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of item 5, and we'll now move on to item 6. The Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring 2020 to 2021 outturn. Can I hereby invite Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, Cabinet Member for Finance, Property and Assets, who will present this item, supported by Louise Mattinson, Director of Finance. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and welcome to Louise for a first example of your committee, which I'm sure she's enjoying already. So on this report, so 3 times a year we come to this panel and present the budget where we think we are at the end of quarters 1, 2 and 3, and then we come and present the final outturn once all the books have been added up, as it were. In reflecting on the leaders' report on what an unusual year it's been, I think the vast difference between what we're reporting tonight and what we reported at quarter 3 is another example of what an unusual year we've suffered. We've received literally millions of pounds from the government in and out. It's come thick and fast, and things have changed on almost a daily basis. Some of those grants are ring-fenced and we know exactly what we can do with it and what we can't, and some of them are not. It's just seems to be here's a bit more money for you to spend on COVID. The outturn is that we'll have a surplus of over £900,000 against what we budgeted for this year, which I've always been, I've said it before and I've said it again. If I like us to be near budget, whether we're over or under, I do like us to be near budget, because that shows that your budgets are accurate and you're doing what you said you did. I don't suppose anybody could have budgeted for the COVID pandemic to have lasted as long as it has. Just before we go on to what we intend to do with the £900,000 plus, just to talk about some of the examples of where that surplus is coming. There's £120,000 of staffing costs that will be paid for by COVID, because they've been working on COVID projects and not doing the day job. Over £40,000 in training budget. We haven't been able to do any significant training this year, certainly not in the way that we normally do. We've had £74,000 additional income from the vehicle maintenance lads down at Moss Side, which is great news. So if there's one area where you want to be over budget, then that is a really successful story. £120,000 in additional planning application fees, which is interesting. So there's a whole raft of things, and of course the biggest one, it's COVID funding that's coming to support the staff and the amazing work they've been doing. What do we intend to do with this? Forgive me if I describe it as a windfall. I'm sure that's not the accurate financial terminology, but I'm presuming we won't get it again next year, so I'm going to call it a little windfall. Bullet point 6 identifies some of the things we'd like to do with it. I'm sure Councillor Evans will be pleased to see we're going to fund the local plan up to 23-24. The asset maintenance reserve, people will recall that when we took control of this council, we hadn't done a full asset review for, well, time immemorial really. We were a reactive council who, when one of our tenants said my roof is leaking, we went out and fixed it. A shutter on a warehouse development wasn't working, we would go out and fix it. But we never did a proper review. We didn't know what the state of our buildings was. It was very much, as I said, reactive rather than proactive. We have gone out now and done that work. We've done an asset review. We know roughly what the state of our buildings are. So I want us to put £400,000 to one side so we can have, some proper backup to the things that we know need doing. The income, what's described there as an income investment reserve. So if we are going to develop new income generating schemes like an extra care scheme, there will be some revenue costs to kick that off. We will need some money. It's not just about the buildings themselves. And we've discussed that before as part of the medium-term financial strategy, that we might need to look at reserves and how they're profiled, so we would have that money. And then I'm sure everybody will be pleased to say that the extra 168,000 will go into our COVID recovery fund. Who knows how long this is going to take and what help the council and our residents and businesses will need. So I'm sure people will be pleased to see that going into that fund. That is the end of my comments, really. Obviously happy to take questions. I know Louise is really looking forward to taking questions. So please do your best.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlinson. I would invite Councillor Sharples. That's the first question.
Yeah, thank you. This is on page 54, refers to the revenue budget variations. We welcome that the staff vacancy information is included in the report. However, some of the unfilled posts have been vacant for some time, such as 2 engineer posts vacant all year. Why is this? And has it had an impact on the slippage of the capital programme mentioned later in the report?
Okay, thanks for your question. And if there are any more questions on this particular appendices, I'll just refer to what I've said before. This is for your information. I'm not always the best person to answer that question because that's why we have Gary here. But I do think, I've said I'm the finance portfolio holder. I'm not in charge of those particular members of staff, but I do think this information is useful for the Scrutiny Committee to have, and I'm thrilled that Gary is here to answer your questions.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlinson. So in relation to the 2 posts that you refer to, effectively the engineering posts, the council's capital programme in starting this financial year has been increased significantly and expanded. So it's moved from doing what I would call relatively small schemes to a much larger programme of work, and the skill sets that we need in relation to doing those types of projects are different. So initially we've been buying some of those skills in, and we've used the funding from those to buy those skills in. Longer term, we are going to have to think about what core skills do we need as an organisation, and how are we going to secure those. The reality is that particularly in the building trade and the development world, those skills are very scarce, and it's unlikely, in my view, that given the constraints on pay that we have in the public sector, that we'd be able to resource all those skills that we need. So there will be a hybrid approach that I think we'll need to adopt in relation to the skills that we need, strengthening the client side that we have, but then some of those skills being brought in. And that's the reason we've kind of held off on filling those posts. We're using it in effect to buying the skills we need for the projects that are ongoing.
Thank you, Gary, for that. I suppose as a follow-up to that, on page 58, planning enforcement. Planning enforcement is regularly highlighted by members as a key service. What are the future plans to fill the vacant posts and develop this area further? Again, I'm probably coming to you here, Gary.
Okay, thank you. So this is another example, actually, of some of the things I've just been speaking about. So we found it quite difficult to recruit into that post and into those types of posts. And the reason is that people with those skills can earn far more in the private sector than they can in the public sector. So the model that we're currently implementing is a hybrid model whereby we have local members of staff who do the lower type of enforcement work, the easiest to deal with. Some of these cases are, particularly around planning, are really complex, and planning law is really complex. So we have a hybrid model where we buy in the skills that we need from a contractor on particularly complex cases, and the more bread and butter work is dealt with internally by staff. And that's a model I think that we would probably keep moving forward. So and there's peaks and troughs in that workload as well. So we don't have a backlog at the moment on those works, but there are some cases in the system that are still ongoing that require that level of input. So that's the model we use, and we'll probably continue to use in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Cole?
Yeah, page 60, paragraph 23, talked about the increase in bad debt. On what basis is the provision for bad debt being increased, and what is the long-term view on this?
I think the uncertainties caused by the pandemic make you look at these things more closely. So clearly at this stage, it isn't actual bad debt. It's just a provision for bad debt. And so I think, the advice is that we be prudent about this. We may not need it, but I think just at this moment in time, it's appropriate to make that provision.
Okay, thank you. Can I please take you to page 68, table 5, the reserve summary? What process is used to ensure reserves are at an appropriate level as they continue to increase significantly? And what assumptions have been made?
Okay, so the wish for the administration to look at reserves closely is made very clear to the Chief Exec and his staff. And my understanding is they go down to managers and look at the work that they're doing and the work that they propose to do, and that those the conversations I've had with James in the past 12 months is that work is still ongoing and has still got some work to do, but senior managers are challenged robustly on these figures and have to justify where they come from.
Gary, you want to come in on that? Or Louise?
I can also add, in terms of the increase in reserves over the course of the year, a significant element of that relates to funding that we've had for business rates from government, and we received that in the financial year 2021, but it will be committed in 21-22. There's just a timing difference of an offset, and that's what the reserve, which is 5.2 million business rates temporary surplus, refers to. So that will be utilised, and so it's not seen such a significant increase over the course of the year.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Can I now take you to page 69, the third bullet point from the bottom? Again, talking about leisure centres. The leisure centre repair and maintenance budgets appear to be large. Why have these costs not been planned in previously, and what can be learned from this for the future?
We've referred to the leisure strategy earlier in the evening, and as far as I'm aware, this spending has been planned, and we have known this has needed to be done, and we have to put the money in place, and we need to get on and spend it. As far as I'm aware, the work that Councillor Titherington's doing informs these figures, and we intend to follow it through and deliver.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sharples.
Yeah, thank you. Page 91, capital programme. The capital programme shows an underspend of over 2.5 million, which is significant and a long-running issue. What is being done to deliver the capital programme as planned?
Yeah, and it's a regular bugbear of mine. When I was in opposition, I used to decry our failure to deliver on the capital programme, and sadly, here we are again. I have to say, and we're all going to be saying this, the pandemic has just knocked our capital programme completely off kilter. A lot of the projects have now been reprofiled, So this is not, we don't want to do this, we haven't got round to it, and you know what, we might never get round to it. This is, we still want to deliver on what is in the capital programme. There is some work to do, I think, about capacity, if we're honest, and I think the Chief Exec intimated the difficulties sometimes in accessing the right people with the right skills at the right time can be really difficult. And we're already seeing in a post-COVID and, dare I say, post-Brexit world that costs, not only are costs increasing, but just getting hold of supplies of certain things is incredibly difficult. And I'd give you a really stark example of the unintended outcome of things like Brexit. Worden car park overflow, which has been in the news locally quite a lot recently. I was on there with Greg Clark, one of our staff. We're having a look at, there was some movement not long after it was fitted. It's all been repaired, it's all under warranty, no cost to the taxpayer. But if those concrete sheets, the concrete sheets with like hive, I can only describe it, hexagonal shapes to eventually allow grass to grow through. There's a shortage of those sheets, national shortage of those sheets, because they've all been bought up to build Brexit lorry parks. So if any of those sheets are permanently damaged, it's really difficult to replace them. So I think that's just an example of, you don't see those things coming, really. And if anybody had seen it coming, it would probably been called Project Fear. So there are post-COVID and post-Brexit costs to these things, but we've always been ambitious about the capital programme. You know, you look at our playground building schemes. Another one started in the last few days. Could be another one going to cabinet on Wednesday. We remain ambitious, but it is personally, despite all that, it is a disappointment that we're so far off, because in the past I have always banged the drum for delivering on the capital programme.
Okay, thank you for that. That completes the panel's questions. Are there any questions from members not on the panel? No, nobody's shouting and screaming. We have received no public questions either, so could we please formulate any recommendations, please, Darren?
Thank you, Chair. Just some of the themes from the discussion and possible recommendations. The panel thanks the Cabinet Member and Director for attending and their detailed report. The panel notes the Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring Outturn report. The panel welcomes the reassurance that staff vacancies are not impacting on service delivery in key areas. And the panel asks the Cabinet Member to review the deliverability of the capital programme in future years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Darren. Therefore, can I thank everyone for attending tonight's meeting, and that will also close the meeting. Thanks very much.